I am an elder of a intertribal, federally recognized Native American group headquartered out of Pipestone, Minnesota. And I've been asked to speak on a couple of subjects tonight. The first one is the importance and the power of a spiritual name. Now, many traditions the uh, have spiritual names that are different than your actual given name from birth. And I want to talk about that from the Cherokee tradition and explain how do you get a spiritual name, number one, and number two, what does that do for you? And in short terms, it gives you power. It gives you power to become who you were created to be. And when you receive the name, oftentimes you are not um, in the fulfillment of that type of a name. Like if somebody's named Roaring Grizzly Bear, uh, they may get that as a young person, and they're not a roaring grizzly bear at the time, but they grow into it, and it's not something somebody just comes up with, or people make it up for themselves, because you may feel really drawn to grizzly bears or eagles or whatever, but that doesn't mean that that's what your spiritual name will be. And in my experience, I've been through three different namings in my lifetime, and I'll talk a bit about that, and how I received the names, and then what the names brought to me as far as personal power, personal abilities. My first name was my given name at birth. I was born in the middle of the 4th of July powwow in Flagstaff, Arizona, and my parents named me James. And I didn't know this until I was an adult. The name James, while it was passed down in our family, was a Hebrew word for a person who is what's called a subplanter, which means someone who takes over another person's garden or planting and continues to grow it and expand it. And that has been the story of my life. I followed the many books written until 1947 when the author died. His name was Ernest Thompson Seton. And his passion in life was to reintroduce human beings to the idea that we are part of nature, not a separate entity from nature. We have an actual, very important role to play. And I'll talk about that on another video. But my life calling has always been to reintroduce people to their part of being in the circle of life. And I started on the work that he started back in the 1800s, and I, became an advisor on the advisory council for his legacy, which was called the Seton Institute in New Mexico. And I continued to carry on that work and expanded on it from my own personal experiences with nature. And I've done that for the rest of my life. And I'm now, as I said, I'm an elder. And an elder doesn't mean older, it means that you have been chosen by a tribal group or a group of people to be an example of how we should live our lives. And the highest honor I think I've ever had was to be given the responsibility of being an elder for the keepers of the sacred traditions, because they wrote that they saw me as a good example for young people. So it's an office, but it's more than that. It's a work of service to be an elder. But of course, in an elder's life, you hopefully obtain not just a lot of wisdom, but not a lot of knowledge, just knowledge, but instead have wisdom, which is the ability to put knowledge that you've learned into practice in your life. So what I've learned about having names is that, at least in the tribal sense, as you mature and grow, you grow into another name. And I'm going to use the example of my life. I received a name through a very, very vivid dream about 40 years ago. And in the dream, there was so much to it. And to this day, 40 years later, it's crisp in my mind. But there was a man on a horse. Turns out he was a real living Lakota elder. I'm not Lakota, but anyhow, I ran into his grandson in an airport in Albuquerque who had a great big pendant that he had carved out of elk antler. And it had the picture of the man that I had in my dream. He had two feathers, two eagle feathers, and he had a spear. And in the dream, this man rode up on the horse and he pointed the spear at me. And he said, because of what I had experienced in the dream, he said, "You are now Two Bears something else," because we don't share the full spirit name. But he said, "You are now Two Bears." And what I found out from his grandson, who was much older than me at the time, was his name was Two Bears. And he had the two feathers and exactly like the pendant that the man had carved of his grandfather. And he said his grandfather was the last living war chief of one of the Lakota nations. And his name was Red Bear. And I think he's passed away by now. But we talked quite a bit, and I told him about the dream, and he said, "Well, he gave you that name, so that's your name." Now, that came through a dream. Sometimes we do what's called a vision quest, where we are coming of age, and we go out in the forest or wherever, and we spend 3 or 4 days fasting and praying and not sleeping and having a fire. That's just the basics of it. There'll be a whole different tape on that, on how to do that. And there's over 500 ways to do a vision quest because there's well over 500 tribes that are recognized by the U.S. government. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't more tribes, but that's another story too. Anyhow, back to the naming. So I was born and named James, and I grew into that name. I grew into fulfilling what that name described. And I also will say that the name itself gave me the ability to become that name. Then after my dream, I was a young man at the time, I started to really pursue not only my experiences in nature, which I've done all my life, but finding out about my own native heritage and learning about that. And that was my name for several years, and I used it. I used to write articles and stuff like that, and a lot of times you'd see my name signed, and that's where I learned you don't put the full name down. It's people can misuse the energy of that name if they're jealous of you or something, and that's thanks to Mary Running Deer, who taught me that. So time went on, and I wore a choker with a little carved bear on it, out of stone, and I had lots of bear things in my house. The bear skull at the altar, and just bear paintings and stuff. And I honored that energy of the bear. And the time came for me to graduate and to enter into the realm of becoming an elder. And I wasn't an elder at the time, but I was getting close. And I was given a task by Mary to go up to the top of a mountain, and there was a lightning-struck bristlecone pine tree, probably over 1,000 years old, and there was a hole in it, and I was to take an object that she gave me, a sacred object, and put it inside that hole and leave it there. And so I did, and when I put my hand inside the hole, I suddenly went sort of out of my body, and I had a vision about me being one with everything. I mean, every rock, plant, I could actually see lifetimes where I had been a tree. And it gave me the name of medicine tree. Now, that's not the full name, because I don't want to tell everybody the full name. But Nuoti Tuglu, or Tuglu Nuoti, is in Cherokee, is medicine tree. So that was my third name. I'm getting close to the point where if I'm doing my job and passing on the right information to people, and that I'll probably get a fourth name. Mary's name is no longer running deer. It's something else, which I won't say. But anyhow, so I'll go through in my lifetime 4 different names. Now, why do you change your name? It's because it brings new power to you to become something different than you are. And the name describes what you're to become. Now, medicine tree, in the traditions out here, I live in Montana, is a special big tree that everybody, when they pass it, traveling from the different tribes in the area, would go and put offerings on the tree, like a feather, or some people put coins, money. Other people put colored cloth and something we call prayer ties. And they leave it with the tree, asking the tree to hold up whatever the honoring is and whatever the prayer is. Like this one that's right down the valley from me, it was used to get good travel, safe travel, on the way to go get buffalo on the other side of the mountain. So my job became, even though I wasn't an elder yet, became the one who would hold up people's connection to the Great Mystery and to Ozda Ama, our good Mother Earth, and connect them. So I'm not like some kind of priest or something that takes their prayers and puts them up. All I am is just the conduit that people use to communicate with the Great Mystery and my cell phone and the Earth. But my job is to not continually do that. My job is to connect them and then to get back out of the way and let the people have their own connection. So I just taught a class a couple weekends ago, and there was a young woman there who really wanted to know more about how do you get a spirit name and what is the purpose of it. And that's what prompted me to do this video. So you can go out on a vision quest and actually see a vision of who you are and what you're here to be. You can actually have a dream like I did. And in the dream, you're given a name. Or you can go to an elder and you can be given a name. Or if you're a young person, to your parents or your grandparents. And if they are spiritually connected, what the process is normally I fast. If somebody wants to know what their spirit name is or their power name, I'll fast for a day while I'm considering the people that want to have a new name. And I'll pray about it. I'll get an answer, and I will translate it into either Lakota or Cherokee, whatever they want. And then I'll present it to them in a little ceremony, and I'll give them a tuft feather, a little tiny breast feather from a bird. And what kind of bird it is depends on what's going on with them. And then they get to keep that feather as a reminder of what their new name is, and they can start using it. But I divide the name in half. I tell them a name that they can use to tell people what their spirit name is. Like in my case, Tuglu Nuote, which is medicine tree. But that's not my full name. If I'm praying to the spirits or to the helpers, I will introduce myself in a different, a fuller name. And so you end up with 2 names. One you can use if you're with a group of people or you're in a ceremony, say you're in a sacred pipe ceremony, and you want to introduce yourself to the spirits and to the people there, you would say, Huyen Tuglu Nuoti. I am the medicine tree, or a medicine tree. It's important to know that when you receive your name, that you're going to need to grow into it to become what that is. If it's a growling grizzly, you a growling grizzly is someone who warns of danger. Because grizzly bears, when they growl and snap their teeth, especially grizzlies, they're warning everybody around, hey, something's not right. I'm not happy. And I'm warning everybody that it's not good. So everybody get aware to be protected. So there's a woman that I know I can use this. Her name is Water Ouzel. Now, if you don't know about birds, here in the mountains, we have these little birds that will dip in the water. They dip their little body in the water to get bugs out of under the rocks that are in the stream. And so her name is Water Ouzel. And there's more to it than that, because when I got that name for her, I went out into a mountain stream and I was asking the creator and Amma, the water, what is this woman's name and what is her purpose? And they gave me a much longer name than just Water Ouzel, but it was a Water Ouzel bird came flying in, and actually the weather changed to 4 different kinds of water in just moments. It went from fog to ice to running water to snow. It was just like this crazy wind came in and changed all these things. So that had to do with her relationship with the earth and with water, and she has grown into that over the 15 years. So anyhow, let me think about names. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, your name does not necessarily identify the medicine spirit or power animal that will be working with you. A really good example is the very famous medicine man first, and then he became a war chief for the Lakota people, was a man named Sitting Bull. And a lot of people don't know this. The reason he was named Sitting Bull is when he was born, a bull buffalo was just outside of the camp, and it sat down, which is unusual because there's people all around. So his grandparents, I think, or his grandfather, named him Sitting Bull, and it actually would have been Sitting Bull Buffalo. But his power animal, if you ever look at photographs of him, he's died way back in the 1800s. He's murdered by the U.S. people. His power animal was the monarch butterfly, and you'll see he'll have one on his shirt or on his hat, and that was to honor the fact that his power came from the monarch butterfly, and he was considered probably the most powerful medicine man of all history of Lakota people. And that's a whole nother story about medicine people and what they can and can't do, and then why he had to become the war chief, which was totally opposite of what a medicine person would be doing. So with that, I'll just answer the question. Well, could I go out and get my own spirit name? Yes, you can. But it has to come from nature somehow, some unusual situation. I'll give you an example. I was getting a name for a woman, and I heard this banging noise outside of my house. I live up in the mountains, and there was this really loud metal banging noise. And I was like, because I'd just been doing the prayer and the ceremony to get her name. And I went outside, and it was a orange shafted flicker with, if you look them up in the bird book, they're kind of like a woodpecker. And that flicker was on top of my propane tank. And here in the US, we have like a metal dome on the top of the propane tank to protect the valves and the pressure gauge and all that. And he was hammering and hammering and hammering on that. And it was ringing out like crazy. Now, the reason they do that in the springtime, the males, they usually pick a hollow tree trunk or even the chimney on a house, like a metal chimney, because it makes bigger noise. And the way they attract their mate is the louder the noise they make when they're hammering, pecking, the more attractive they become to the females. Well, this was a name for a woman. So what her name became, because of my association with that particular bird, was her Her name was Eminent, meaning immediate change. Eminent change. And she has grown into this amazingly powerful little tiny woman, but really a powerful woman who has the ability to go into people's lives and prepare them for some change that's coming into their life. She is intuitive and can figure out what's coming their way and help prepare them in a good way, because it's almost always a good change. But anyhow, that's how she got her name and her power. So that's about 20 minutes worth. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it, and I'll check the comments. I'm going to put this up on YouTube. So everybody have a good evening.